So, colleagues, thank you for your stamina and for your inputs, for the discussions, for the debate. It's my privilege to sort of just give my final thoughts before I hand over to Mark Roberts, who has led the organisation of this event from the Air and Space Power Association. I think most of the points have been pretty much covered. I just want to say things from a personal perspective. So yes, I'm here as part of the leadership team of the UK Space Agency. Put that to one side. There's a little bit of that, but there's some personal perspectives here. In terms of where we are now and how far we've come in terms of defence space capabilities, the establishment of Space Directorate, Space Command, I do have many years ago, this is going back, 25, 26 years ago, I spent 3 years out at Decalia, attached to British Forces Cyprus, and did a lot of things, learnt to skydive, kept jumping with military skydiving teams and so on. So I've always had a very close affinity to the military, but I'd never been involved on the space side. And I think it was 2021 or so, lots of time available because of the pandemic. And at that time, I was on what's called STFC Council. So it was the sort of senior science board of the UK's main research council for particle physics, astronomy, and fundamental research in physics and physics applications. So when you look at Harwell, STFC, we've got a total of 2,000 scientists and engineers there. But the rationale for the involvement for the space side was that we really had the responsibility for building, in partnership with the MOD, the National Satellite Test Facility that I think many of you have seen. And at that time, I had a lot of time, and I was invited, I can't remember which routing it came from now Air Marshal Harve Smith, to meet with his team and sort of like talk about some space stuff, and they liked what I was talking about, and we ended up doing much more work together. And this was before I joined the agency. So having looked back then in 2021, I think the journey that we've come on is a bit of a cliche there. It's absolutely remarkable. I see as an external the pace of it. And with my UK Space Agency hat on, that alignment, yes, we've got more to do, but that coming together, we are so far away from where we were, say, when the agency was established in 2011. It's absolutely fantastic to see. Yes, we've got clear priorities we need for the future going forwards, but some of the discussions today, I'm just going to now talk about sort of lessons that I do with our MSc and our undergraduate professional students coming into the space sector from elsewhere. There was a point that General Whiting made, and it was about sort of the challenges that we now face. There are two contexts that I use from quite a while ago that happened quite a while ago, but what would be the consequences now? The first one was deliberate, and the second one was accidental. So the accidental one, 2009, the conjunction of Cosmos 2251, this dead, I think it was old Soviet era, maybe it was Russian, but, recon satellite, and Iridium 33 SATCOM satellite. And we know what happened. Thousands of bits of debris went into low Earth orbit, multiple planes, multiple altitudes, lurking for a long time. Back at that time, there were barely 800 to 1,000 active satellites. If that happened now, it would take out so much of our critical national infrastructure, as has been recognised. But the point that General Whiting was really highlighting was about space-based nuclear weapons. So go back to 1962 with Starfish Prime as a test that was conducted, altitude probably 250 miles, 400 kilometres, saturated the inner Van Allen radiation belt, caused havoc with Ariel and Telstar, but there were barely a dozen, 20, 30 operational satellites now. If that happened now as a deliberate act, it would take out the operational architecture we depend upon, and we can see the consequences there. So the urgency is there. But I want to end with a sort of uplifting note. Firstly, when we're talking about skills, very often when it comes down to the power of space, people talk about the Apollo effect. But I think, because I've looked in detail at some of the evidence put forward, and I think they're conflating the Apollo effect with something that happened a decade earlier, which was the Eisenhower administration response to Sputnik, which was the National Defense Education Act that put so much effort at school level, at university level, in a focused strategic matter. It changed the US research and innovation landscape for decades. And I think there's an opportunity space for us to seize, obviously at smaller levels. And then the final thing I'd like to say from the civil space side is, if we pick the right strategic opportunity and develop it, then, it secures our future and our industry and our capability for decades. And the example I want to pick is from my area of specialism, which is human spaceflight exploration. So in 1969, when Spiro Agnew was thinking, what is, as vice president, the follow-up to Apollo, Space Task Group, NASA made the first approach to the government of Canada to get involved in human spaceflight. And in 1975, Canada made the decision to develop the robotic arm assembly. So that was 1975. So Canadarm1 first flew on the second flight of the space shuttle, so November 81, and flew on most of those shuttle missions right to the end of the program. Canadarm2 is on the ISS at the moment. Future iterations, greater mobility. Canadarm3 is going to be in lunar orbit on the Gateway. And the point I want to make is a strategic decision that was made decades ago really accelerated not only Canada's platforming of its capabilities, but its actual base. Now, of course, we can't do that, but I think there's an opportunity for us, civ and defence, to identify where our talents are in academia and industry, to pick those key projects going forward and to really run with them. So I'd like to thank all of you for all of your energy, your participations in the discussions. It has been an absolute honour and privilege and a pleasure to be working with you for the last 2 days. But I'd like to hand over finally to Mark Roberts as head of the Aerospace Power Association for final comments. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, so you indulge me for nice to say. I'm just you thank yous and try and capture the people that you've seen, but maybe didn't realise where they came from. So the first thing is I'd like to echo the General's comments about the Space Command team. It has been a true collaboration. It's an enormous effort of planning of months and months to pull something like this together, and the team have been absolutely fantastic. So thank you, sir. I need to thank IET. It's a great venue. We've used it several times now, and they're incredibly flexible here. That's a real bonus when you're trying to keep on top of something like this of this scale. The people who've been carrying the microphones from the University of London Air Squadron, who never get mentioned. I always forget them every year, but I wasn't going to do it this year. I'd also like to thank the security team. I think we have about half the Metropolitan Police here somewhere around the place, but there's and the agencies have been involved as well. So you're in a very secure environment, and hopefully you haven't noticed. I need to mention my outstanding team, Clive, Catherine, and the team that are out the front there. Absolutely brilliant. Again, a huge flexibility. Things don't always go perfectly well, but hopefully you don't see the friction on the way. I'd like to thank all of the panelists, particularly the ones that have come from overseas, the speakers. Thank you very much for your insight, your input. It's incredibly important to a conference like this that we get a wide diversity of views, and that's what we've seen in the last couple of days. I need to thank the sponsors, without which a conference like this just simply doesn't happen. I am going to mention one person particularly. He's had a lot of thanks already, and seems to have had invitations to go and join the BBC. Anu, please don't go to the BBC. We need you in the space sector. I'd like to bestow on you honorary membership of the association, if that's okay, and give you one of these rather lovely ties.
Thank you very much.
Finally, I'll echo the General's comments about your participation as well. And somebody just, I think it was Anu, mentioned the word energy. It's my view that conferences like this, the energy comes from out there, not from on the stage. This has been a great conference. General, I think that's a wrap. Thank you very much.